Hey, what's going on, my friends? It's Dave Sharpe. Welcome to Wake Up Legendary. My friends, we're back in the saddle here this morning on this beautiful Tuesday, May 20th, my friends, 2025. We're live here every day. If you guys are wondering, you're listening to the replay somewhere, you're wondering where we go live at, we're over here on our Legendary Marketer Facebook business page. Hey, Ryan Halpert, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good. Welcome to the show, my friend. I'm excited to talk about what we have on the menu today. Yesterday, I ranted quite a bit about the Outdoor Boys move, the guy to shut down his channel. I think he's got about 10 million subscribers. And I talked a little bit about that and, how some people, and this, but some people have a totally different experience doing the exact same thing that you're doing in life. And so I think that's sometime interesting to look at. If somebody's having that positive of an experience, let me think about that and let me realize that it's me and that I can make some shifts. And if I make some shifts, then I can be headed in a different or better direction. And that's common sense with everything, right? That's just not here in online marketing. I mean, so today we're going to talk about another decision that you can make that can influence your success and influence your chances of being your own boss versus needing a boss. So what is that decision and how can somebody make it, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, the decision is basically just coming in every day and not being afraid to say what you want to say and do what you want to do and have the message you want to have because you're worried about what other people are going to think. You're not skewing or you're not watering down that message, right? It's something that so many people do when they get started. Something I did when I got started. I was more worried about people I knew, what they were going to think, and friends and family and what they were going to think. And, or just, people hating me or disliking me because of something that I said. And what it did was it just put me in this sort of neutral space that never went anywhere, right? It was just kind of just these boring posts that you put them out and nobody was interested and it wasn't impactful and it wasn't exciting or entertaining, right? There was no extremes. There was nothing. It was just this, neutral, just lack of entertainment, lack of excitement, lack of anything that was interesting remotely inside of my content and in my videos. And so when I started actually talking more like I do, right, kind of like I do on this show, being really authentic, saying what I actually thought, right, and not beating around the bush on stuff, it made a huge difference. It allowed me to show up as myself. It allowed me to show up authentic. And then that's when I started to have more people paying attention. That's when I started to have people saying, I like this guy. People saying, I agree with what you say. People saying things that were actually real contributions to stuff that I was trying to create conversations about.
They went as far as to say they like you?
Some people did. Yeah, some people did.
Unbelievable.
Believe it or not.
Yeah. No, amazing. There's somebody for everybody out there in the world, and I know you're certainly for me. But I'm just glad somebody else likes you. This reminds me of a documentary that I was able to catch yesterday, and I caught it during a meal, and it's the Liver King documentary. And I don't know if any of you have seen the Liver King, but this reminds me this decision. What is this decision? Let's recap. The decision is to take your everything that you have sort of to a next professional level. And if you're going to have a marketing campaign, it needs to stand out and say something. So that's the decision that you're away from. One. Now it's a lot of decisions after that decision, but it's the decision to step into a a better marketer, a better salesperson. It's ultimately the decision that you're making, right? And if you make that decision like up at the core of as the first decision that you make, like, look, I'm going to embrace sales and marketing here. Like, I'm going to embrace sales and marketing. I'm listening to a podcast that's called Wake Up Legendary because we're legendary marketer. So you're already hanging inside of a community of marketers. It's not like this is legendary, you know, support of this isn't a knitting. I mean, nothing against knitting. This isn't a pickleball. This isn't a tennis club. We're marketing here. We're selling. We're figuring out too how we go from only marketing and selling to actually also delivering value if we want to create our own course or our own coaching program, right? These are the big decisions that you're making, and you need to make them first. I'm going to embrace sales and marketing. Also, I'm going to embrace being a coach. I'm going to it's kind of like when you put on a costume at Halloween. And the difference in that costume, if you really embrace the part or if you half-ass it and be yourself. It's a huge difference, Ryan. You know that.
It is. Yeah. It goes from being just underwhelming to just being something that everybody remembers.
Let me finish the point about the Liver King documentary, because I watched it yesterday. Now I had followed Liver King on Instagram because he was polarizing and interesting. And I thought, here's a guy who's already jacked. If you don't know who Liver King is, he's the guy who eats raw liver, was really jacked, and had kind of everybody on this, I guess, belief that he was doing it all naturally. And then he came out, and it was either his email was hacked or something. Somehow somebody found an email between him and a bodybuilding trainer or coach. They hacked his email. They stole the email and exposed him, basically. I mean, winning real guerrilla style. But anyways, found the emails, exposed him that he was on steroids and wasn't actually natural, living this kind of this lifestyle of ancestral tenets was kind of what he talked about. Like these ancestral tenets, if you live by these ancestral tenets, then these 8 or 10 tenets, which are like spend time with your family, like ground to the earth, eat, work out, like basic things. But he was found out to become to be on steroids. However, that's not the point of the story. And that's not why I brought him up. Why I brought him up was because when I first started watching Liver King on Instagram, just following him, I wasn't like watching, just a guy that came across my feed. I thought he was interesting, and I did start following him. I was like, wow, this guy has really kind of stepped into a role. He's a cool cat. He's a different cat. I can't stop. Like you watch his stuff because he's always got his shirt off. He's eating raw liver. It's different, right? It's really different. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. And it's not really anything he's saying. It's like how he's saying it. I came across this other account yesterday, and it was really interesting as well, right? Because here was this lady who is clearly recording these videos, from home. I mean, you can scroll through her videos and see she's really seems like a pretty normal lady. I mean, so did Liver King, though. So did Liver King. But when you watch the documentary, you actually realize that they created this figure. they show you videos about how he was back in the very beginning before he became the Liver King. He was just Brian. He didn't have a longer beard. He didn't have the, you know, the big, he didn't have the big chairs, the big king chairs that he sat in when he was sitting down for dinner. He used to do that all the time. Now his content's not as popular as it used to be, obviously, because when you're in the fitness world, right, whether you're on steroids or not is very important, right? But this is an example of kind of the things he wore on his head, and you know, he really looked the part, you know. But they in the documentary, what you realize is there was a full marketing agency behind this guy. There was a full, they made this character. They made this guy who he is. You hear from the marketing team on the documentary. It was hard for him to do some of these videos at first. He talks about that. It was awkward for him to do some of these videos at first. He wasn't natural on camera. He wasn't really good on camera. But the first time that he became the Liver King and did a video, it went crazy. And then he started to get it. And the truth is that this guy would be a world-renowned icon if it wasn't for the steroid thing. By the way, nobody even on his team knew that he was on steroids. So it was his own secret. He screwed himself.
Wow.
He could have been. And with this marketing team behind him, and here's my point. You're only one decision away from firing your boss. Look, same with this witch lady, guys. Same with this witch lady. She's got a persona. She's doing something different, right? She's doing something different. She's taken her persona online and made it interesting. And is all she's, and again, there may be a marketing team behind her. I bet there is, because she really knows what she's doing in terms of creating this persona online. Now, she's clever, she's slick, she's saying things that make sense, good stuff. But the way in which she looks like a witch, you see one of her videos, it's like, what the hell is this? It stops the scroll. It gets you watching. The same way that Liver Kings did. And I would say these two examples have taken that, not water it down, but be yourself, and then even take it up a notch so you can get, because here's why. And let me put a bow on this, and then I'll pause for you, Ryan. We live in this is where we're at, unfortunately, in life and in society, is that people, this is why I believe people like Donald Trump, hate him or love him. I'm not talking about his politics. I'm talking about the man, the person, the celebrity, the reality TV star. I believe this is why people like him are in power. I mean, there's lots of other politicians. There's lots of other people that even in the presidential race ran. In the beginning, there's like 20 people. It's because we live in a society where we need more. We need more entertainment. We need more action, more, you know, the movie's got to have more of everything. More action, faster, more, you know, gore, more everything. The video's got to be funnier. We're scrolling within a couple of seconds. So it's like, for me, it's not only about not watering down content, it's also about being really creative and thinking outside the box at all of the possibilities about your content and what you're doing. It'd be like any business that you're in. How can you stand out? How can you be different? On an internet full of people where so many people are doing the same thing. How do you stand out? That's the decision that you have to make, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with this witch lady, you know, one thing that really comes up for me is just that I've never seen her before. It's the first time I've ever seen that lady. I didn't even know she existed. But it's like that's something that, you know, there's always that interest that you have that you just don't want to share with people, right? There's that thing that you only talk about at home, or there's that thing that, you know, it's like if you're really into like Pokemon cards or something, right? There's a lot of people that might, you know, you might not want to get picked on as an adult who's into something like Pokemon cards, right? But then you've got the witch lady who's really embracing that. And it goes back to what you said about there's always somebody for there's somebody for everybody, you know, or there's going to be a crowd. There's going to be a group of people that like that. And there's going to be a group of people that don't. And you're going to get both of them on social media. Unfortunately, you're going to have to get both when you're that polarizing and you're that, you know, unique. But that's the way to grow. Just like, you know, Liver King, right? And the steroid thing. There was probably people accusing him of being on steroids before they had any inkling of evidence that he actually was, right? And that's just people that are like, oh, I can't believe this guy's this jacked, you know, and as it turns out, they were right, but still, that's besides the point. There's lots of other bodybuilders that are not on steroids that are in incredible shape, and people are going to make that accusation. But you can't, because that's going to happen regardless. That's the thing that everybody's so afraid of is, well, what if somebody tries to call me out, or what if somebody, you know, says something mean, or what if somebody, you know, thinks that it's weird or they don't understand it, and it's you know, it's going to happen, right? It's not so much deciding that you're going to do it anyway, but just deciding that I'm going to be able to handle it when it happens, right? Or deciding I'm not going to care, or deciding that I'm going to be able to handle it when it happens. And this is how I'm going to handle it when it happens. And in most cases, you probably just ignore those people, right? You just don't even talk to them. You know, like if I was really into, I'm trying to think of something weird that I'm into, but I just don't necessarily think that anything I do is really weird, right? Like I kind of like you like watches, right? I really like watches. You like watches, right? We spend a lot of money on watches. Some people might think that's weird, right? And I just approach that like I like talking about that, right? I like talking about watches. I like talking about that stuff. I like talking about nerding out on different things. And there's going to be people who think that that's weird. And actually, I don't even care, right? And now it's not actually something as polarizing as being a witch or being you know, a bodybuilder that eats raw liver. But it kind of goes within the same thing, right? There's nothing that you can't introduce and you shouldn't introduce that's really authentic to you and your personality and your interests and things that you really like to talk about, because you think that somebody else is going to think it's weird or something like that. The weirder it is, probably the more potential it has to actually get you a lot of exposure and to build you a real audience.
Yeah.
Because that just means, I mean, honestly, the way I look at it, if you're something like a witch, right, that's an underserved audience, right? There's a lot of people that will not go on social media dressed like a witch and act like a witch. And I don't know how extreme she gets. I don't know if she's putting
she smokes a lot of dope on the page. I mean, she's always smoking some weed, so that's one thing. I mean,
so that
the hippies, the weed heads, the witches, the old witches, the people who, I mean, there's a lot of people who are going to connect with her, especially if she's smoking weed.
Yeah. It's just another thing that draws them in for sure. There's an audience for it, you know?
That's what I'm talking about in terms of also doing things that are crazy. And again, I'm not encouraging you guys to do stuff that's crazy. I'm helping you guys to understand that and remember that most of the time when a marketing campaign is set up to truly succeed, where people are putting money behind it and so forth, and not just sweat equity like most of us are doing here, right? When there's real money, when there's real investors, when there's a real initiative, most of the time there's a theme, there's a plan, and they're executing in a way that is going to guarantee a reaction of some sort. Now, it may not get the reaction that they want. That's the dice roll, but it's going to get a reaction. And let me share with you guys some of the ideas that came up in my head about things that I was considering after watching this documentary, because I want you to understand sort of also how my brain thinks. So I sat there and I watched The Liver King, And how do I turn like watching that and walking around and thinking like I do, which I was just telling my girlfriend last night, like, I was like, God, I just walk around so often just thinking because I like to think. You know, this is one of the things that one of those old dog billionaires gave advice, like give yourself time to think. But anyways, I was thinking after I watched that documentary and I thought, well, damn, what? I mean, the documentary makes a good point about being polarized and about standing out, about where we're at. I had this whole realization after watching it that, damn, there was a lot of intention behind that. Like they didn't come up to this guy and he had a supplement business. That was kind of the thing. He had a supplement business, I believe called Ancestral Supplements or something like that, where he was already packaging organ and liver and so forth into capsules, I believe. And so they wanted, that was ultimately what they were trying to create a marketing plan for. And he went to this agency and that's what they came up with, right? That's what they did. But it made me think, like, well, what are people in my niche doing? What am I doing? What are we doing that's interesting, that's different? And then I started thinking about comedy, right? I started thinking about one of the shows that I love. It's called Kill Tony. It's a comedy show. It's also now on Netflix. Started on YouTube. Like many of the biggest shows that are on TV today, the Pat McAfee show on ESPN, that's now right in the middle of the day, started on YouTube. And now he's one of the biggest sports announcers in all of ESPN. Pat McAfee, former kicker, punter for the Indianapolis Colts. So what does that look like? I started thinking and I thought, well, shit, maybe there's some characters I could dress up as and play in some videos. I mean, there was a video that I came out with at one point in couple of few years ago where I was Dr. Seymour Bucks, like Money Bucks. And Dr. Seymour Bucks did a video in his white doctor coat and glasses. And it was funny. It was cool, man. It was right. Like, because sometimes when you dress up, you get to be a little bit more of something than you're not normally. Kind of like when you put on a Halloween costume. There's been a couple of other times throughout my career where I've dressed up. Like I used to do events in a company that I had before Legendary. And when we did these events, we would come out at the beginning of the events as different characters. In Chicago, we were a gangster. Somewhere else, we were superheroes. Another place in Austin, we actually did Austin, we were cowboys. I mean, these are little things that can take your videos and that can take your content and your brand and just make it more interesting, right? Something that even, and I say this, and I'll pause with this statement, that your success in marketing is somewhat correlated to your willingness to be embarrassed in order to execute your mission, right? Because whatever the hell you do could fail. And if you get embarrassed by failing, then you're going to be afraid to do these kind of things. And this part of your brain is not going to open up as wide. So I also encourage you to get unafraid of failing, to realize that there's so many people. I posted something yesterday. So many people that were rejected in their early. Walt Disney turned 300 rejections into the most magical brand on earth. Picasso created 20,000 artworks before the world recognized his genius. Spielberg was rejected from film school 3 times before becoming a legendary director. The Beatles played over 1,000 shows and were rejected by 4 labels before revolutionizing music. That's something that I posted on my Instagram yesterday, and it's because it's true. So these are some ideas that came from that dadgum documentary, and also tie into this decision, which it can be multiple decisions, but it's this big decision to back up. away from what you're doing and embrace being a marketing and a salesperson. Similar to as many of the other, I would assume Spielberg had to embrace being a director. Do you know how animated he probably was on the set? You think he walked around like a meek little mouse? Maybe he did. But I would imagine that he was vocal. I would imagine that he was quite something to see. I would imagine that Picasso, when he was painting, embraced and that he was an artist. I bet that, you know, Walt Disney embraced that he was this wild, crazy guy who came up with these really weird ideas and embrace that. You too have to embrace that you're a marketer and a salesperson in that business and have to do that in order to succeed. And then if you're going to coach, embrace that you're a coach. Really own that. And I think those decisions then help you make other smaller decisions about, and also open up the part of your brain that's going to think about weird stuff and have weird creative marketing ideas. It's going to open up your brain to those ideas and help them flow a little bit more easier.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all to just make videos that are just more fun to watch, more exciting to watch, more memorable. There's this group of content creators that intentionally do this, right? They've gone viral and built an entire business, right? When I say viral, I'm not just talking about, they got 10 and 20,000 views. I'm talking hundreds of millions and billions of views in total, right? By being authentic, by doing weird things that people don't understand when they first see it. And something like taking a spare rib and wrapping it in tinfoil and trying to put it under the hood of your car and cook it that way, right? And just like doing weird things, like these thoughts that, oh, would that ever work? I don't know if it's going to work, but I've thought about this, and now I got somebody in front of me on a video trying it, right? And just, taking these weird ideas and putting them out there and getting people to watch, right? And, people will pay attention to that. People will pay attention to that kind of stuff. And when you listen to, this person in interviews, she'll say, like, we were the most hated people on the internet for years. We created the most hated videos on the internet, but we got more views than anybody else on the internet, right? And they made more money as a result, right? And they weren't even monetizing anything. Now they sell education information products. Basically, they are selling how they did what they did, which is a really smart move for them. But they up until then, they were only monetizing off of the views that they were getting, right? And it was enough. It was enough for them to sustain, right? Continuing to do it and investing large amounts of money into some of this content so they can create this really authentic, really entertaining, really weird, really strange, content. It's also kind of like the cosplay community. So if anybody doesn't know, that's basically like dressing up in costumes and playing his characters. And a lot of people do this, right? It's a man and a woman thing. And they'll basically just dress up in these costumes and do these trends, right? And people enjoy watching it. Those videos get lots and lots and lots of views. And, they use, the trending songs. I watched a documentary yesterday as well. And it was quite a bit different from the documentary you watched. Mine was about like a cult, a social media cult that they took all of these viral dancers on social media and they basically had them in this church and they were just stealing all their money essentially and then cutting off their family and all this. It's called Dancing with the Devil on Netflix, if anybody wants to watch it, with the Robert Shin guy. But they one of the things that they talked about in this was that one of the cool tips that blew them all up, because part of what they did was they started an agency, and they were giving these dancing creators the content to create, do these trends, do these dances, do these, right? And one of the tips he gave, he says, I want to have all of you dancing to the top 10 songs of this year. in the older music category. I forget how they worded it, but it was basically the older songs, right? Your Elton John and your Big and Rich and that kind of stuff. And it's like, you got these young kids and they're like, man, I ain't about this stuff. But if the boss man says dance to this, I'm gonna dance to this. And they did, and it worked. And, the Beatles were in there. Like a lot of these songs that everybody knew, that everybody were familiar with, instead of going with that new rap song or that new whatever it was that was in the mainstream category, they went with these top songs that, can come on at any time and most people will listen to it and not be upset about it. They started doing that. And that all of a sudden blew up every creator in this agency, right? And so it's just another example of, you think that, okay, I've always only, danced to hip hop music or danced to this genre of music. You throw some Elton John in there, it might get even better. You don't know, right? If you're somebody that's afraid to do that because, I think my audience isn't going to like it, or I think it's not going to work, or I think people are going to say that this was a bad idea, or whatever you're worried about, right? Just give that you could try something like that. It makes you more authentic because now you like that music probably, but it's also something that could potentially work a whole lot better. So all I'm saying here is that it's an interesting tip. I thought that was really, really cool. But look at the opportunity that would have been missed had you decided to just stick in your safe zone and just let's keep doing these little trendy cosplay dance things that some people are watching, and let's just stay there because it's working to a degree, as opposed to trying something that could potentially work for the masses, and then lo and behold, it did. We also don't know how many other things that this person had them try to see if it would work. We know about the one winning idea, right? So I'm not trying to make it sound like it's overly simple, but that was the thing that they talked about, that, it just, that's a huge thing. It's why did these creators blow up? Well, it's because of the song. And that's what they, that's what they said. So it's interesting, really, really interesting.
What one last final thought of how to, if you want to start by borrowing somebody else's voice or polarity, or you want to borrow somebody else's content in a way that allows you to actually use somebody else's videos but not be considered stealing them, then folks react to them. And that's exactly what this guy right here does. Some people hate him, some people love him. I don't know. I don't follow him that closely. I just know he's a guy who the number one type of post that he's created over the past year or so has been reaction videos to other people. And so he's constantly reacting, watching other videos from polarizing people like Andrew Tate, for example, where he's just sitting here watching the video and then has a big reaction to it. And the majority of his videos that have, the ones that I've noticed that have done really good. Now, here's the cool thing about using somebody else's video like this, is that you can use somebody else's video and tap into all of the things that you may have thought before you didn't have, so you couldn't stop the scroll. For example, in this video right here, he's imagine this is, scrolling through somebody's timeline. He's now borrowing this girl's beauty, right? Because it was the first thing that somebody sees. So he's now borrowing her beauty. He doesn't have that beauty. He's borrowing her beauty. Same thing with Dan Bilzerian right here, right? Big mask. Those two guys look very different, right? Mark and Dan Bilzerian. But he's borrowing that look by just putting the guy's face on his page in a video and then obviously reacting to it. Doing the same thing with this girl here, borrowing her beauty, borrowing the content, right? That's what's happening here. Borrowing Andrew Tate's polarizing effect, borrowing it, stealing it in a completely ethical way. So if you want to be able to leverage somebody else's polarizing personality, somebody else who has, I mean, you could obviously put videos of Liver King and react to them. I mean, anything. Obviously, look, here he's borrowing Grant Cardone's authority and his polarizing image and voice and message and putting it on his video. And so there's ways that you guys can also borrow other people's character, if you will, for lack of better terms, as you develop your character. And you might be saying, what do you mean my character? Well, every person has an archetype, right? You already are a character of some sort in your audience's eyes, but you don't even realize it yet. And so you could probably do a little bit of research on character archetypes in the marketplace, or as for leaders and spokespeople of movements and companies. And you'll see there's archetypes like the reluctant hero, or archetypes like the adventurer, or archetypes like the reporter, or a couple of different ones, to where you actually, in the case of Mark that I just showed, he's more acting as the reporter archetype. Same thing that Oprah did throughout her career. She wasn't particularly the persona, the spokesperson, the one with the wild persona or personality. She always had people on her show and she reported that and brought that to you, right? So there is a couple of different ways. Mark is both playing the sort of reluctant hero or the leader, right? He's also playing the reporter by bringing you those voices in those other people who are weird and polarizing. So, my friends, look, it's something to back up and think about and own and embrace, because you are wearing these hats inside of your business. You are a salesperson. You are a marketer. You are a coach. You are a trainer, right? These are labels. These are personas that it's okay to embrace, and it'll behoove you to do so. And in making that decision, it'll definitely move you closer to your success. All right, my friends, we're going to get out of here. We, as you may know, are doing a mastermind up in Nashville, September 5th, 6th, and 7th. You can go to legendarymarketermastermind.com/Nashville and grab a ticket. I believe VIP is either sold out or almost sold out. It's
been sold out. Yeah, okay. It's sold out within 3 or 4 days. Okay. So unfortunately, we don't have any more spots there, but we do have tickets left.
Okay, my friend, grab one, meet us in Nashville. And trust me, it'll be a legendary time. Ryan, get out of here, brother. Have a great day.
I'll see you later.
Have a fantastic, legendary day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another episode. Peace.
Peace.